Welcome to our web talk on OIP4NWE Innovation Support Fund. Just in time for the start of the second voucher call, we, the OIP4NWE consortium, decided to present the call in detail in a webinar. Jürgen von Erbs will present the framework conditions of the new call and show to you what has changed in contrast to the first call. After the presentation, we will answer all your questions in the discussion round. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them into the chat, or otherwise you can raise your hands after the presentation, so then we can discuss it and Jürgen can give his answer, because he's the guy who knows everything about the call. And therefore, Jürgen, the stage is yours. And if you would like to do so, please start your screen sharing.
Thank you very much, Hendrik. Yep.
Does it work?
Share.
Ah, perfect. Perfect.
Let's try to go to full screen mode as well. Does that work?
Yeah, works.
Okay, perfect. All right, welcome everybody. So indeed, today the topic of the webinar will be the introduction to our second call for vouchers for pilot production of indium phosphide-based photonic integrated circuits. But first, let me start with introducing the project. So the OIP4NWE project is funded by the Interreg in Northwest Europe scheme, and is a consortium of several different partners, which you see indicated here on the slide. So the project is coordinated by the Technical University of Eindhoven, TUE in the Netherlands. And then there are a couple of academic institutions, so amongst VUB, of which I am from, and also Tyndall National Institute in Ireland. But we also have companies in the consortium that are basically technology providers, such like Extron. We have also service providers like Smart Photonics, and application developers like Embryonics, VTech, and others, Photon First, for example. And then there's also, of course, some cluster associations like Photonics Britannia and the NMWP.NRW, which are taking care of the communication and outreach activities within the framework. The basic goal of the project is to set up an open innovation pilot line or activity centered on indium phosphide photonic integrated circuits, and to basically try to do some technological developments to progress beyond the state of the art in terms of manufacturing and packaging those devices, and to do so in an open innovation context. So the main goal is to increase the maturity of the indium phosphide-based photonic integrated circuit products, and to be able to scale up also their manufacturing. So that is basically on a kind of technical level. But the second and at least as important point is to provide technology support to companies that are looking to mature their photonic integrated circuit-based products. And as mentioned, the goal is to do that as much as possible through an open collaboration, such that all parties benefit from the collaboration. And it is for this technology support that we have opened up our innovation support scheme, which was launched last year, and which we have currently a second call open, and of which, of course, I will tell much more details later on in the talk. And as mentioned as well, and our midterm, our longer term target is to establish an open innovation environment for indium phosphide PIC technology in Europe. And so that composes or compresses the collaborative ecosystem. So where researchers, foundries, equipment manufacturers, and application developers can work together, ideally even sharing some equipment, so to work together in the same clean room, working on state-of-the-art equipment developments and fabrication methods to really advance the field and benefit everybody in an effective way. All right, so the typical development cycle in photonic integrated circuits is indicated on this slide. Let me turn on my pointer here. Yeah, so typically you start, of course, from the application lead. So you have a particular application idea, and then we can have a look at whether the application can benefit from a photonic integrated circuit. And then, of course, the next step in doing the cycle is to go towards design, which basically can be done by the application developer or by a design house, where, of course, the design is done according to photonic design kits, such that you can adhere to certain rules to be compatible with the next step, which is then the fabrication, which can, for example, be done through multi-project wafer runs or MPWs. So basically there, the idea is to share the wafer space between several different designs to basically reduce the cost of the fabrication process as well. And then the two last blocks are sometimes overlooked, but are also very important. And these are the packaging of the chip, which basically means you are assembling the components, you are providing the electrical interconnects, the optical interconnects to the outside world, but also taking care of aspects like thermal management of the chip, especially since the indium phosphide platform has as a unique property that you can integrate active components in the platform. So like SOA, semiconductor optical amplifiers, or you can basically also introduce lasers on the chip. That, as opposed to other platforms that where actives is much more difficult to integrate in the platform. And finally, of course, you want to assemble everything into a final product. So a functional module and targeted to the particular application with which everybody started in the first place. Now, typically, the step from fabrication to packaging and finally going into an ultimate product is typically something where there is some gaps in the chain currently. So there's quite some activities on making pilot lines for all kinds of photonic integrated circuits and so on. But then including packaging and going towards the final product, there we found that there were still some gaps existing, and that is basically where we want with the OIP4NWE project to step in and in particular try to support companies by the Innovation Support Fund that I will explain later on. So basically, the idea is to go really from prototype. So when a first proof of concept has been done using a photonic integrated circuit, and to scale that up towards pilot production. So basically, if you would translate that into TRL levels or technology readiness levels, we would be sitting somewhere between 4 and 7, indicated in yellow here. So where scaling up the production beyond a single prototype encounters typical hurdles like, okay, reliability, cost, yield, scalability of the manufacturing and assembly and packaging processes, ultimately with the aim of coming to a series of fully packaged products that really can be integrated into functional modules. So that is basically the idea behind the OIP4NWE project. Okay, so as mentioned, if you look at the design of photonic ICs, you typically use process design kits or PDKs that allow you to basically put existing building blocks together and to really connect the different blocks with each other, such that you can then come to a mask design and proceed to the manufacturing process, for example, in an MPW run. So there's already a very broad set of building blocks available, which partly are passives, like waveguides, but can also include amplifiers, modulators, polarization, controlling components, and so on and so forth. So there's really a large set of building blocks that can be combined into a fully integrated circuit. So that's on the design side. Once you go into the manufacturing, of course, one of the goals of the OIP4NWE project is to improve on the processes that are being used in the manufacturing of those devices, and mainly looking at epitaxy, yield, and stability of the processes, and to have some technological advances over there, and also to integrate new building blocks. And we're always trying to expand the set of building blocks such that more and more functionalities become available to the designers of those photonic integrated circuits. within the project. It's mainly an activity driven by TU Eindhoven and Smart Photonics. And of course, the next step is going towards the packaging of these photonic integrated circuits. As you see illustrated here with this nice image from Tyndall National Institute, you have a photonic integrated circuit here in the center. Then the interface into the outside world is done in many different ways. It can be done through fiber arrays, which may or may not contain some optics on top of the fibers. You may have micro-optical components, lens arrays to interface with the outside world. There's all kinds of electrical connections to be made. So high-speed electrical interposers can come into play, integration with electronic devices, and as well the thermal management that I mentioned before to make sure that that you have decent temperature control on the chip. All these things can be taken into account through an activity of where the technology advancements on this side are done by Tyndall National Institute and VUB, where, for example, we are focusing on mode conversion taper structures that can be integrated directly on optical fibers, or micro optics development to integrate those things and to achieve maximal coupling efficiency between the photonic integrated circuit and the outside world, which is typically fibers and fiber arrays. Okay, now we come to the main course of today's webinar. So one of the short-term goals is to provide innovation support, as mentioned, and the call for vouchers is currently open. So basically, we have a set of vouchers available that allows users or applicants to bring their proof of concept prototype into a higher maturity level, meaning to scale up the production to a series of components, where the service providers within the project are Smart Photonics for the fabrication of the indium phosphide-based photonic integrated circuits. VUB can take care of external optics if needed for the particular application, and Tyndall then looks into the functional packaging of the manufactured chips into a fully packaged device, taking care of electrical interconnects, optical interconnects, and thermal management on those chips. So that is basically the idea. Let's now dive into a little bit more detail. This slide is pretty full, but it basically contains the main message for today. So I will bring this slide up later on again at the end of my talk because it kind of summarizes everything. So if you are a European-based company with the idea of scaling your proof of concept demonstration of a PIC-based product towards trial series to have a couple of samples available, you can apply to receive our vouchers, which provide innovation support with a value up to 50, let's say a support from the project of up to 50 kilo euros, and getting access to the support and the expertise that is available within the OIP4NWE project. And so basically what can be covered by the vouchers is, first of all, a design verification. So normally you should have a design ready, or at least a first design ready, which you can then modify slightly to run your PIC through the manufacturing. So the first activity is typically a design verification to check the compatibility of the design with our pilot line. And secondly, as mentioned, the manufacturing of the PIC, the external optics if needed, and the packaging of the device into a fully functional module. And so these are the activities that are supported. And in terms of timeline, our call is currently open. We have opened the call beginning of December last year, and we are currently, doing these webinar series to spread the word about the call. Basically, there are two different deadlines. It's a submission deadlines for the applications. The ultimate deadline is the 31st of May, so there's still some time to apply. And as I will explain later on, the typical way of working is that if you are interested in the scheme, you would first submit an expression of interest, which is a very short document with some basic information in there. so that we can assess and get in touch with you and have some technical discussions with you in an early phase. And if these discussions are successful, you can submit a full application form and sign a so-called proxy NDA, such that the application can be evaluated by the people who are taking care of the evaluation within the network. I will come back to that later on. Now, to avoid that, if somebody would have an application ready early on, to avoid that, these persons would have to wait until end of May before the applications would be evaluated. We have set an intermediate slot deadline at the end of February, such that we can do an intermediate evaluation of the applications that have been submitted until then. And typically 1 month after the deadline, so for the first slot, that will be end of March, we will announce the winners of the vouchers of the applications until then. And the second slot, so that's currently the final deadline by which you should submit your application, is the end of May. And that means that in June, the applications will be evaluated, and by the end of June, the winners of the applicants will be announced in this second slot. So that is basically the main timeline. The maximum financial support, as mentioned, is 50 kilo euros. Now, you can apply independently whether you are a small or medium-sized enterprise or whether you're not an SME. The funding level is slightly different though. So if you are an SME, you basically have 80% support up to this maximum of 50 kilo euros. Whereas if you are not an SME, the financial support is 50%. Yeah. So I'll come back to the details later on, but that is a slight difference between SMEs and larger companies applying to the call. The funding rate is different. And for both, the maximum support is 50 kilo euros. So if let's say that the technical work to be done within the project exceeds the 50 kilo euros, it's perfectly possible, but that will mean that anything above the 50 kilo euro support will have to be fully funded by the applicant in that case. All right, so that's kind of an overview. Let's dive a little bit more into the details now. So if you are interested in the call, we have, of course, to fulfill a number of requirements. And in comparison to the call of last year, we have tried to relax as much as possible these requirements. So what are the current requirements for application to the call? First of all, as mentioned, there is no longer a strict requirement on the company side. So previously you had to be an SME, and now the call is also open to non-SMEs. While of course priority will still be given to SMEs if we have a large number of applications, but you are no longer there is no longer the requirement to be an SME. So that's already a nice relaxation. Secondly, the applicant should have relevant activities based in Europe. So you have to have relevant activities or R&D activities within Europe, but you are no longer necessarily within the Northwest Europe region, which was the requirement before, such that also now we have a broader potential application base. So that's the second relaxation. And thirdly, as mentioned, you should have a proof of concept demonstration, or let's say a PIC design ready, which means that early entrants that have not yet used a PIC or that don't have a first proof of concept prototype available should probably look at other innovation support schemes out there. We can also point you towards the right ones, but that translates to a TRL, a technology readiness level of your current product that should be 3 or higher. Yeah, so I showed the TRL line earlier before. TRL 1 and 2 would be, very early phase where you would still need to do a proof of concept demonstration. That is not within scope of the call. We can look at design modifications, so you can improve upon or make changes to your existing design. But if you have no design at all ready, you should basically first go to other innovation support schemes. Yeah. So, but this is also a relaxation in the sense that previously a TRL level 4 or higher was needed. This is a small, there's always a little bit of gray zone in these TRL levels, but nevertheless, it's these first 3 requirements that have been strongly relaxed compared to the first call for applicants that we had last year. So that's very positive, I think, that we were able to relax those requirements. Then the other requirements, 4 to 7, let's go over them as well. So in the application form, there is also a part on the business case for the product. And so basically, very briefly, you should, as an applicant, also describe the business case that you see for the scale up and the volume production, describing how you will see a positive impact of this project on your future business, which can be either through increased revenues or through the creation of new jobs. Basically, that's these are two potential, say, positive impacts that the project should have. The fifth one, that's an administrative one. So you should comply with the de minimis criterion for state aid. So that basically means that there is a maximum amount of support that you can get, and you should comply with this maximum and provide a self-declaration to that end. And we will then, after running, or let's say when granting the voucher, we will also award a de minimis letter by the consortium to say that you comply to this criteria. On then the final two ones, so these are more practical oriented. So you should submit a fully completed voucher application form. That's basically ideally after having submitted an expression of interest form. And you should sign a proxy NDA, which allows then the different partners within the project to evaluate your proposal. So that's our voucher selection committee that is taking care of this evaluation. I will come back in more details on the evaluation later on. And finally, and that is something that that is mostly aimed at dissemination afterwards. And so the voucher recipients should agree to collaborate on documenting their use case, which means that in very general lines, without any technical detail, you should agree on publicly stating that you received support from the OIP4NWE Innovation Support Fund, which we can then use as kind of best cases or public or let's say dissemination material to attract more users during as well as after the project. So that's basically the last requirement. Okay, now let's dive a little bit more into the practicalities. So the application procedure typically would be a two-step procedure where the first one is actually optional. And so as mentioned, ideally you would already at an early stage submit an expression of interest form. That's really a two-pager. You see briefly the overview of the 2 pages over here, where you provide some contact details, the application domain, saying like, okay, is your application around indium phosphide PICs, and just a brief description on what your idea is to see whether you could fit the scope of the voucher call. We will also at that point already do kind of a check that you comply with the requirements that I just mentioned before. And this is really a minimal amount of effort from your side and allows you to avoid directly filling out the complete application form, which is a little bit longer. Still, we try to minimize the administration from your side. But nevertheless, if you go through this expression of interest step, we will typically, read the documents, set up a technical meeting to discuss a little bit more in detail if we have some questions at that point. And that allows you to already discuss with our technological experts more in detail and allows you to make a more dedicated application form where you can already specify some more technical details in the application form itself. Okay. So the second step, if we say, okay, after this meeting or after reading your document, we say, look, this really looks like fitting the call and you seem to comply with the requirements, then you can proceed with filling out the full application form. And these are a little bit more elaborate, but still very much kept to a minimum. So again, it starts with some let me just check if I have some details on that here. Maybe I can directly jump to there. So you have some some details, contact details over here, contact person, general project information, basically stating the application domain, saying at which TRL level your product is currently and where you want to take it to. And then part A is basically on the technical side, provide a description of what you want to do. So the abstract, that's in very general, broad terms, what you would like to do. You'll see also that all the fields indicated by the asterisk here is what after or during the voucher execution will be used as material that we can publicly disseminate. And so in these fields, you should not put too much technical details and keep it quite general. Then there are a couple of fields further describing the context of the innovation project, the innovation approach, the major challenges that you foresee, the target specifications, and then further details about the technicalities of the project. In part B, we have some questions about the business case aspect. So the impact that you expect from the outcome of the project on your business, such that we have a little bit of an idea of the application on which you're working and what the market potential is and so on. So it should not be a fully established business plan, but very briefly. And there's to help you a couple of questions to which we look for in the document. So describing your target markets, the market validation, your route to markets that you see for the application, your competitive positioning, your unique competitive advantage, and briefly a financial business plan. So ultimately, the most important section is the last section here, the new business and the EU jobs expected from the project. So as mentioned, that is then basically the impact that you expect in terms of either increased revenues or additional workforce. All right, I skipped this slide, so now I come back to this, where we list the selection criteria. So once your application form is submitted, it will be evaluated by our voucher selection committee, and we will evaluate the proposal based on the criteria that are mentioned here on the slide. So there are 4 aspects which we look at during the evaluation, each with their own weight. So you see here that the first 2 points have a weight of 1, whereas the third and the fourth point have a weight of 2. So first, we look at the innovative character of the project. So we look at questions like, is the proposed solution new to the market? Is it creating valuable know-how? Are photonic integrated circuits the enabling elements in the project? So these are the questions we look for in this first point. Secondly, the technical feasibility and the quality of the project plan. So as mentioned before, we need to assess whether your application is compatible with our pilot line. What is the current TRL level? How should the PIC be interfaced with the outside world? What is the goal there to come to a full package? And yeah, is the proposed technological approach in line with the project goals? So more on the technical side. Then we have two assessments that are more applicant related and business case related. And so the third point is the credibility and the level of commitment of the company. So what is the level of financial commitment? Does the company agree with paying the part of the project that is not subsidized by the voucher? What is the track records of bringing new products or solutions to the market? What is the track record in successfully completing public or public-private funded project? That kind of questions. And finally, the added value on the business case and the potential impact, which is of course very important as well, as mentioned before, with some questions related to the different aspects that I just ran over in the application form and the target market, market validation, the route to markets, the value proposition, and the financial aspects. Okay, so these are the main points that will be assessed. Each criterion will be scored between 0 and 5, and the score is then multiplied with the weight associated to it. And then the individual score for each of these 4 criterions should be at least 2.5 out of 5, and the total score should be at least 20 out of 30. In that case, your voucher application will be granted. In case we have several, if we have a large amount of applications, we will also take into account the geographical distribution. First of all, looking at whether you're within the Northwest Europe region or whether you're outside of the Northwest Europe region. Priority will be given to SMEs rather than to large-scale companies, as I mentioned before, as well as distribution over different application sectors. But these are just additional selection criteria that would only come into play if we would have a huge amount of applications and a broad selection base. Yeah? So this is basically the selection criteria, and that brings me back to the main slide here. So we have in total 7 vouchers available, of which 2 were granted in the call of last year. So that basically means that there's still 5 vouchers available at this point. And the ultimate deadline is the end of May, but there is an intermediate deadline at the end of February. If you want to get started quickly, then you might aim for the end of February deadline and get in touch with us to look at the possibilities. All the details about the voucher call can also be found on the website, so OIP4NWE.EU/vouchers, onto which we also have a list of frequently asked questions. So that's very valuable information to look at. And of course, now this brings me to the end of my talk, and I am open to any questions that you might have at this point already. So thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, Jürgen, thank you very much for this very interesting talk, and it was very comprehensive. So if you have any questions, please put them into the tab chat, or otherwise, if you raise your hand, we can give you the mic so that you can ask your question directly. Okay, first of all, I think I have some questions possibly. So if you said, I think you said it, but I hope I'm right. If I'm a company and I already have a design idea and I apply with this design idea and you think this is not perfect or could be improved, the consortium also gives advice how to improve this this design. That's right.
Yes, that's correct. So it will typically not be possible to do a complete redesign of the chip, but minor modifications in view of making your design compatible with the pilot line is definitely also something that we can support with. Yes.
But I think compatible is something like the indium phosphide basis. It needs to be indium phosphide. As it is indium phosphide, I think this is the main hurdle. So if this is the same basis, I think the rest is optimization. So I think we can rely on your expertise to make the chips slightly better. Okay, perfect.
Yes, that's correct.
And if a company does not have any clue about photonic integrated circuits, but he thinks, okay, the company thinks, okay, we can improve our the performance of our chips, and we say, okay, we don't have any clue and no design, we still can get into contact with OIP4NWE, and you will give some hints and some access to the OIP to the photonic integrated circuits community, so that these people can get a first advice. So how to?
So there's different innovation support initiatives in Europe, and it is not such a clear field for newcomers, and so not everybody might have a good view on the landscape of what is available. And even if you don't comply completely with the requirements for our call, we will be happy to point you towards some of the innovation support activities that can help you if you are at an early TRL level, for example, and are in need for early POC. Yeah.
Perfect. That's great. And I think you are the person who could be contacted in any time, because the next thing would be if a company applies for one of our vouchers, they won't get a rejection letter at first response. You will get you will give a feedback, and you will get into contact with the companies to give advice how the application could be improved, right?
Yes, that's correct. So that's why I mentioned that ideally you would first go with a minimal effort expression of interest submission, we can get in touch with you.
2 pages.
Have a discussion. It's 2 pages, so really doesn't need to be extended. We set up a meeting with some of the technical experts from the different service providers in the project. We can discuss, and you can then in a very early stage already know whether it makes sense to submit the full application form or not. So as I mentioned, it's an optional step, so you can also decide to directly go to submitting the full application. But it's always handy if you have already some upfront discussions that help you as well to fill out the full application form. And if you don't comply with any of the requirements, we can mention that at an early stage without you having to do the effort for the full application. Of course, even for the full application, we tried to keep the amount of text writing and the amount of input from your side. We try to keep it to an absolute minimum. Indeed, ideally, it's best to get in touch with us at a very early stage.
Yeah, I think another very important improvement of the second voucher call is that in the first call, it was focused on SMEs, and now it's open to all companies. So this is another very important detail. And you mentioned it, there are just 5 vouchers left. So because now I think we have a much bigger target group if it's possible for all companies to apply. So I think maybe these 5 vouchers could be given soon. So yeah. Okay, I have a first question in the chat. Hello, is there any funding for individual innovative projects? I mean, not company projects.
So then you mean you mean from research-based applicants? Is that then the question? So in principle, the current innovation support fund is aimed at companies in the sense that we also require to be at a certain TRL level when applying. Typically, you know, if you're on the non-company side, you would normally also enter at a lower TRL level, and there would be other innovation support activities that would be better suited for your application as well. Then, but again, it's not because you don't fit our call that it's not possible to get in touch with us, and we can try to point you towards other initiatives where you can be more successful.
But yes, in OIP4NWE, we focus on companies. So I think this is very important. If the innovation, the individual innovative project. So I think if I, as Hendrik, has an idea about a nice chip, this couldn't be, this is not suitable for OIP4NWE, at least if I don't have a company. So this is very important.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
But Professor Mohammed, if you have any idea, get into contact. Maybe we can help you. Yeah,
absolutely.
Are there further questions? Okay. We have a PIC design currently being fabricated in a MPW run, which will which we will receive this summer. Can we apply?
In that case, I would definitely suggest to get in touch with us, and we can see what can be done there.
Okay, perfect. Michael Roudet, that was your question. Is it answered? Yes. Yeah. So get into contact.
Yes. Yeah. We need to look at a little bit more details to see the but it's definitely something on which we should have a discussion to see what is possible.
Okay. So now further questions. Because yes, your talk was so comprehensive. You already answered all my questions I had.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So indeed, feel free to get in touch through the email at any point, and we can.
Yep. Yes. We have the URL on this slide, OIP4NWE.eu/vouchers. Yeah, there you can find further informations, and also I think all the contact details you need are also on this website. So
that's true.
Because right now it seems. Oh yes, the email is voucher@OIP4NWE.eu. Because I think right now we don't seem to have any further questions. Again, thank you very much for your talk. It was very complete. If you have any further questions later on, don't hesitate to contact us for anything. Even if you don't have a design, I think we can provide you feedback about how to get part of the Photonic Integrated Circuits community. So again, Jürgen, thank you very, very much for your talk, and thank you, dear participants, for your interest. And I hope we will see you soon. Jürgen, any last words?
Well, thank you very much for your attention. And as mentioned, feel free to get in touch with us at any point. We'll be happy to help you further.
Okay, so thank you and have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.